everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared, and in this video we're going to talk about industries and careers. Is yours going to be around during the millennium? On this channel we focus a lot on the signs of the times and different doctrines that have to do with the second coming in the millennium, and we've covered many things. And in my interactions with you, sometimes I wonder, with a few, not many, but with a few, if it's really dawning on you what's about to happen and just how different the world is going to look after this happens, like how different it is from right now, our everyday business and the way that we go about our lives. We've discussed, for example, whenever the wicked are destroyed and the earth is cleansed. Are we ready for that to happen? Are you under the impression that no, it's not going to be any of your friends, it's not going to be any of your family, it's not going to be anybody you know, it's only going to be people, out there somewhere in society that are really bad or something like that? I feel like there's some people that are just simply not ready. Either they're already not able to cope with what's going to happen, or they just haven't thought about it, or they haven't carried things out to their logical conclusions. But that's what we're going to do in this video, because the fact of the matter is, there are different businesses, industries, careers that are not going to be around. Point blank, period. Probably the most famous one, and this one's brought up a lot in talking about the millennium, is war fighters, the military. Why? Because in Isaiah chapter 2, verse 4, it says, "And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more." So, if you're in the military, and I was, it was only for 3.5 years, and that was enough. And it was enough just PMCSing these Humvees every Monday. That stands for Preventative Maintenance Checks and Services. Every Monday, you go down to the motor stables or the motor pool, whatever you want to call it, where all the vehicles are. And the ones that you're assigned, you have to go through this process and check for leaks and do all the things. And then when something needs to be fixed, you go to the mechanics, and then they don't fix it and they just complain. But this is not going to be a thing anymore. If you're a career service member and the second coming happens, you're going to be doing something else. And I'm sure that the Lord has, a plan for this really big transition. Like I've said before, the second coming, is the true Great Reset. It is going to be the resets of all resets. Just think about how many people are tied to the military, both service members, but also, civilian, like DoD employees or civilian contractors, and entire businesses that produce the weapons of war and equipment for the military. It's a lot of people. That is a lot of people. Now, as Isaiah suggests, these weapons and equipment of war, I think he actually means that they will be used for peaceful purposes. Just think about the Humvees and tanks. Even though they are designed for war, they can be used for other things, where you can strip them down, recycle the metal, strip them down for parts, or I don't know what. Maybe you could remake them so that they can have some kind of civilian application. But that's a really big one that's going to change. But it's more than just that. It is more than just that. If you'll remember, a long time ago, started a spreadsheet that I haven't revisited since that time. This has been like maybe more than a year, where I wanted to go over the entire millennium, all the things that we can reasonably expect to change. And for some reason, there was a number of people that thought that this was just so silly. This is just such a waste of time thinking about these things. Graffiti. Oh, I don't know where you live. I don't have graffiti where I live. Which I find that hard to believe because if you've been anywhere in the world and gone to a public restroom, I'm pretty sure you've seen marker, pen, etchings in the walls and mirrors. Any place. If you've ever seen it, are you familiar with trains? Have you ever seen a freight train? That's like that is the main tapestry. That's the main uh, thing, canvas for graffiti artists. So we went over the fact that that's probably going to completely cease during the millennium. If there's any remaining, it's just going to be like lighthearted, like kids that don't know any better. But it's not going to be to the scale that we see today. I don't know why when I did this video, it triggered so many people, and it did. I don't know if it's just scary to think about a better world where we're not going to have to deal with so many things. But whatever the case, I will continue this spreadsheet at some time. But I've created a new spreadsheet called Millennium Careers, just to focus on careers. And so we've talked about the military. I'll do all my references, some other time. I'm kind of like rushing to do this video. Talked about military contractors. Think about, and I wasn't doing this in any particular order. I was just kind of whatever came to mind first. But I think that we can safely say that this scene is going to go away. There's not going to be any more elderly people at slot machines, or the entire casino, except for maybe hotels and amazing buffets. But they're probably not going to be amazing because the casino is going to be gone. There's not going to be, anyway, restaurants, whatever. But the gambling side of it, gone. I'm sure. I don't know. Maybe the Savior would allow. It's not like it's going to become like well, I don't know what it's going to be like, frankly. I know that he's going to allow people to still hold on to their beliefs, their religious beliefs, and I'm sure that he will allow for people to still sin. But I tend to think that this could be outlawed, or if it's not outlawed, the type of people that remain may not be as prone to gamble. I don't know. You can put your thoughts in the comments below. But I tend to think that what goes on in casinos, shows, in gambling and otherwise, is typically associated with telestial behavior. Not that it's only telestials that give these places their patronage, but I don't know. I don't think that there's going to be much of this around, if any, at all. So that's probably going to be another big change. And there's a lot of people that are employed by casinos and the gaming industry and all the stuff that surrounds it. So that's something to think about. Now, the main thing I want to focus on in this video is the law of consecration. And I'm not going to pretend to know the answers of exactly what things are going to look like in the millennium. But think about this industry, the banking and finance industry. With the law of consecration, and this is something I don't quite know for sure. I think that even in the millennium, it's going to be something practiced among the membership of the church, but a good portion of the world will be members of the church. And then later on, everyone's either going to, the older generations that don't accept the gospel are either going to pass away or they will convert. There's going to come a time during the millennium where the entire world will be members of the church, but not at the beginning. And I'm just talking about the beginning. So I don't know if the law of consecration is going to be imposed on everybody, both inside and outside the church. And I'm not, when I say impose, that sounds bad, but we're going to be expected to live that in the millennium as members of the church. Is Christ going to expect the rest of the world to do that too? I don't know. I don't know. But why don't we think about these type of careers that deal in finance, so like loans, whether it's auto loans, mortgages, all these different types of accounts, um, even things like like real estate. And I think I put real estate on here. Yeah, real estate, because the nature of owning things is going to be different under the law of consecration. It's going to be somewhat similar, but we're going to read that right now. Honestly, I don't know how much of this I'm going to read. I tried to go through and I was starting to highlight things, but it's like there's so much in this. This is under Enrichment L, the law of consecration and stewardship. And you can find this in the Institute Doctrine and Covenants Student Manual. So this does a pretty good job, I think, of summing up everything having to do with the law of consecration, the full implementation of the law of consecration. We are living it in a sense now, but not fully. I'm about to show you. And I think I've heard people say, well, yeah, we're living it right now. No, we are not living it fully right now. We're only living a portion. And it goes through all the different quotes, all the different prophets, apostles, scriptures. Don't worry. We're going to go over all that right here. I'm willing to bet that any question that you have about the law of consecration is probably going to be answered during this. So listen up. And I cringe to think a little bit about when this is implemented in full. You're gonna have those that are living in telestial law not move on, but even those that are terrestrial and celestial in the church may struggle with this, especially if you have a lot. If you have a lot of land, many possessions, I don't know. Just look, okay, and prepare, prepare your mind, because this could end up being a very rude awakening. Introduction: the law of consecration in stewardship. Okay, this is a key term, by the way. So consecration and stewardship, those are like the two key words of what we're about to read. The law of consecration and stewardship is the highest manifestation of gospel living. Many view this law as only a temporal economic program, but it is a spiritual command as well. So it's not just something for this life. It's not just a material thing. It is spiritual. See, D&C 2935. Behold, I gave unto him that he should be an agent unto himself, and I gave unto him commandment, but no temporal commandment gave I unto him. For my commandments are spiritual. They're not natural, nor temporal, neither carnal, nor sensual. The personal requirements for celestial living are also the foundation for the successful practice of this holy and ancient order of gospel life. It is the basis upon which Zion, the New Jerusalem, is to be built and the preparations completed for the glorious Messianic reign. President George Q. Cannon taught, and remember, he was first counselor in the first presidency, quote, "The time must come when we must obey that which was revealed to us as the order of Enoch." Right? Remember Enoch and his city? They're the ones that were living so righteously, including this, the law of consecration, that they were translated and taken up. Okay. Continuing with with this quotation. When there shall be no rich and no poor among the Latter-day Saints, when wealth will not be a temptation, when every man will love his neighbor as he does himself, when every man and woman will labor for the good of all as much as for self, the day must come, and we may as well prepare our hearts for it, brethren. For as wealth increases, I see more and more a necessity for the institution of such an order. Yikes. Now, let's think about how we're living right now. I'm sure everybody, poor and rich, are trying to acquire more. We're living in a fallen world, and that's the name of the game. If you're a worldly person, if you're focused on material things, it's typically about acquiring more. Not always. It may not be material things. You can go off into like other. We've talked about, uh, you know, pride, toxicity, narcissism. Sometimes it's not so much about money, but it's about acquiring fame, fortune. Well, no, not for fame, control, power, feeling special, whatever. But when it comes to money, I think we would all like to have a lot, so we could live comfortably and do all the fun things that we want to do. But are we prepared for this? When wealth will not be a temptation, when every man will love his neighbor as he does himself. This is the concerning thing right here. As wealth increases, luxury and extravagance have more power over us. The necessity for such an order is very great, and God, undoubtedly, in his own time and way, will inspire his servant, the prophet, to introduce it among the people. You know, this is something that I've talked about a lot. We've read lots of quotes about luxury, how today's youth are attempting to go to college and then start out their married life with the same things that their parents have. For example, because they've become used to those luxuries and nice things. They've been taught that that's what, a picture perfect family should have. Instead of being okay with living in an apartment for a while, um, maybe a long while before you can reasonably afford uh, to support your family and afford a place to live that you can buy. Okay, let's continue. Consecration of celestial law. According to the Doctrine and Covenants, early attempts to build Zion in this dispensation failed because of transgression and because the saints were, quote, not united according to the union required by the law of the celestial kingdom. And Zion cannot be built up unless it is by the principles of the law of the celestial kingdom. From D&C 105, 4 through 5. These principles are part of the law of Christ to prepare the sanctified for celestial glory. The development of personal righteousness is how the blessings of Zion are obtained, and in due time, the celestial world. For this is Zion, the pure in heart. D&C 97:21. The scriptures further describe some of the characteristics of those who strive to live the principles of Zion. Unity is of primary importance. If ye are not one, ye are not mine, said the Lord. D&C 38:27. Zion requires that all be of one heart and one mind. D&C 45:65. I know I can skip that because you have to go to a different place in the manual. Another characteristic of the Zion society is that the people had all things in common among them. This is how the law of consecration was administered. And it's going to go over the specifics of that. Okay. It's going to go over how the law of consecration is not socialism, it is not communism, and what it means to have all things in common. I think some people think that it's like, oh, no one owned anything. There was no private property. Well, we'll get to that in just a minute. Sacrifice is the principle through which the individual is able to practice the law of consecration. Elder Bruce R. McConkie explained, quote, I shall now set forth some of the principles of sacrifice and consecration to which the true saints must conform. The true saints, opposed to the tares, opposed to false saints, to which the true saints must conform if they are ever to go where God and Christ are, and have an inheritance with the faithful saints of ages past. The law of consecration is a celestial law. So is the law of consecration. Sacrifice and consecration are inseparably intertwined. The law of consecration is that we consecrate our time, our talents, and our money and property to the cause of the church. Such are to be available to the extent they are needed to further the Lord's interests on the earth. The law of sacrifice is that we are willing to sacrifice all that we have for the truth's sake. Our character and reputation, our honor and applause, our good name among men, our houses, lands, and families, all things, even our very lives, if need be. And I think that's something that we all have to ask ourselves. You know, are you willing to sacrifice your house? Are you willing to sacrifice your uh, fun things that you have? Your computer, your, I don't know, ATV, your TVs, if it came down to it? Or would there be complaining? Would you feel like that wasn't just? I've seen it in my life. People arguing over property and things like that. Uh, Being stingy, greedy, possessive, competitive. Keeping up with the Joneses. If you're from a foreign country, that means like showing off to your other rich friends, like, oh, well, I'm up to date. I got the coolest new, whatever shoes. I'm up to date with the latest fad. Joseph Smith said, a religion that does not require the sacrifice of all things never has power sufficient to produce the faith necessary to lead unto life and salvation. We are not always called upon to live the whole law of consecration and give all of our time, talents, and means to building up of the Lord's earthly kingdom. Few of us are called upon to sacrifice much of what we possess. And at the moment, there's only an occasional martyr in the cause of revealed religion. But what the scriptural account means is that to gain celestial salvation, we must be able to live these laws to the full if we are called upon to do so. Explicit in this is the reality that we must in fact live them to the extent we are called upon to do so. And you guys, would you do that? If like your bishop asked you something that was like a great sacrifice, your car, maybe your car's needed, would you be willing to do that? Would you be all upset if like the car was returned to you and there was like a ding on it or mud? Would you make a big stink about it? Or would you be happy that you had that to bless whoever's life, it helped? Okay. Now I think it is perfectly clear the Lord expects far more of us than we sometimes render in response. We are not as other men. We are the saints of God and have the revelations of heaven. Where much is given, much is expected. We are to put first in our lives the things of his kingdom. All right, that's the end of the quote. Okay, section L3, the fundamentals of consecration. President Marion G. Romney said, quote, the basic principle and justification for the law of consecration is that everything we have belongs to the Lord. Therefore, the Lord may call upon us for any and all of the property which we have. because it belongs to him. End quote. This important principle is emphasized throughout the revelations of the Doctrine and Covenants. And I have made the earth rich, and behold, it is my footstool. Wherefore, again, will I stand upon it. D&C 38, verse 17. It must needs be that the riches of the earth are mine to give, but beware of pride, lest ye become as the Nephites of old. D&C 38, 39. And let not any among you say that it is his own, for it shall not be called his, nor any part of it. You guys, I've seen it in my life. I'm sure you've seen it. Maybe you're currently doing it. I don't know. People that love their possessions, love them, which there's nothing wrong with that, but there is like a line that you cross where it crosses into um, idolatry, where that thing becomes an idol to you because it takes such precedence in your life. Um, and I think when it gets to that point, the reason why it takes such precedence in your life, most of the time, is probably because you use that thing to get attention from people. You know, you have a huge baseball collection and you like to show it off, or you're a huge fan of a certain team and you have a den and it's decked out in whatever team you want, all their, all the memorabilia, and you like to show off how much of a blank fan you are. Fill in the blank. Um, I don't know. These are the things to think about. Pretty soon, we're gonna have to make some pretty tough decisions. You know, if we really want to be a Zion people and live a celestial law. Okay, the unrighteous distribution of possessions causes much difficulty. The Lord has said, "It is not given that one man should possess that which is above another. Wherefore, the world lieth in sin." And the distribution of goods and services, that's what that's what the economy is, right? When you study the economy, you're studying how goods and services are distributed throughout the world, throughout a nation, whatever. And it's probably never, almost in any instance, equal or just. President Marion G. Romney noted, quote, "In this revelation, D&C 42, which the prophet designated the law of the church, the Lord revealed the essentials of the united order," which was his program for eliminating the inequalities among men. Okay, this is another key term. If you haven't heard this before, the united order. That's like the full implementation of the law of consecration. It is based upon the underlying concept that the earth and all things therein belong to the Lord, and that men hold earthly possessions as stewards, accountable to him. So everything belongs to the Lord, and you are a steward over whatever has been given to you. It must needs be done in mine own way. D&C 104, 14 through 16. In his way, there are two cardinal principles. One, consecration, and two, stewardship. To enter the united order, one consecrated all his possessions to the church by a covenant and a deed which could not be broken. So he's talking about the early church when they tried to do this. Okay? So you consecrated all your possessions to the church by a covenant and a deed which could not be broken. I don't know what that looks like. I know what a deed looks like. But as far as like actually covenanting or how that works, I don't know. I assume it would just be the paperwork that you would do with the church or with your bishop. But can you imagine that? Think about the last time you went and bought something nice for your house. I don't know if it would be like on an ongoing basis. I have no idea what this even looks like. Maybe there's like just an initial covenant in deed for your property. Maybe, I don't know. But think about that in the future. That is, he completely divested himself of all his property by conveying it to the church. Yikes. I feel like that's going to be rough on some people, provided that they make it to the second coming, to the millennium. Recognition of the Lord as the rightful owner of all things is the standard of righteousness, living by which to govern our temporal concerns and assist with the needs of the kingdom. All right, section L4, the fundamentals of stewardship. Receiving a stewardship. Once consecration of all things was made to the church, the individual was ready to receive a stewardship and accept complete accountability for it. President Romney described this process. Quote, "The consecrator received from the church a stewardship by a deed. This stewardship could be more or less than the original consecration, the object being to make every man equal according to his family, according to his circumstances, and his wants and needs." So if you're worried about everyone getting the exact same size house and property and whatever, it's not the case. It's according to circumstances, wants, and needs. And I'm having the feeling that the wants part of it may be a little bit tricky. Everybody wants a lot, but I guess we'll see how that goes in the future. In a later revelation, the Lord said it was to be administered to every man according to his wants and his needs, insomuch as his wants are just. All right, so that's a qualifier if your wants are just. In the early management of this program by the saints in Missouri, the question arose of who should determine the amount of property to be returned by the church to the consecrator. The prophet Joseph Smith provided the following guidelines. Quote, listen to this carefully. In case all of this has you, flustered, this might help. Concerning the consecration of property, this is Joseph Smith talking. First, it is not right to condescend to very great particulars in taking inventories. The fact is this: a man is bound by the law of the church to consecrate to the bishop before he can be considered a legal heir to the kingdom of Zion. Okay. I know it's already been said in so many words, but to be a legal heir to the kingdom of Zion, you have to first consecrate your property and belongings to the bishop. Okay, later. And this too, without constraint, and unless he does this, he cannot be acknowledged before the Lord on the church book. Therefore, to condescend to particulars, I will tell you that every man must be his own judge how much he should receive and how much he should suffer to remain in the hands of the bishop. I speak of those who consecrate more than they need for the support of themselves and their families. The matter of consecration must be done by the mutual consent of both parties. For to give the bishop power to say how much every man shall have, and he be obliged to comply with the bishop's judgment, is giving to the bishop more power than a king has. And upon the other hand, to let every man say how much he needs, and the bishop be obliged to comply with his judgment, is to throw Zion into confusion and make a slave of the bishop. The fact is, there must be a balance or equilibrium of power between the bishop and the people, and thus harmony and goodwill may be preserved among you. So it's not like the bishop is going to have like a checklist of all your things and have each thing itemized, all the components, of whatever the end item is, and then like go through and then use some thing to be like, well, this crosses, this percentage, and so I'm sorry, you're gonna have to pick and choose some here. I don't think it's gonna come down to that, and I don't think it's gonna be as bad as you think. I really don't. Um, I mean, just think about how we're living it right now. Again, we're not living it fully, but when we give fast offerings, for example, no one's like sitting there asking you to calculate, because like fast offerings, it's basically supposed to be um, the amount of money that you would have spent for those meals that you fasted. So I haven't heard of any stories where the bishop has asked somebody to come in, for an audit and be like, okay, well, I need to figure out, how did you come to this number? Like, where would you have bought this food? At Walmart? At Kroger's? What like, how did you come to this? This doesn't seem right to me. So I think that could possibly be kind of an example of how things will go. It's just that there's going to be more required, or it's going to be, just more than it is now, but it's not going to be like nitpicky. And I think that's basically what Joseph Smith is saying. All right. So anyway, therefore, those persons consecrating property to the bishop in Zion and then receiving an inheritance back must reasonably show to the bishop that they need as much as they claim. But in case the two parties cannot come to a mutual agreement, the bishop is to have nothing to do about receiving such consecrations, and the case must be laid before a council of 12 high priests, the bishop not being one of the council, but is to lay the case before them. So this would probably go for those people that like to hoard things or like to take more than their fair share. And, you know, so we're not doing like individual little inventories, but there is reason. And it's like, okay, well, you want 500 acres? I'm not sure that we can do that, brother so and so. That's a lot of land, or whatever the case may be. You want a 20-bedroom house, and you have a family of 5. Well, yeah, I need it for 4 bedrooms for each person. One is for a gaming room for each person. Everyone picks their own favorite game, and then you know so there's going to be like some checks and balances there. But anyway, the bishop, and then if they can't come to a conclusion, it goes before a council of 12 high priests. This is how it was done before. I'm assuming that these same guidelines and these same directions would hold true in the millennium. I'm sorry. And I think that was at the end of the quote. Yes. Okay, the manual. The expressions in the revelations describing the portion or stewardship as quote unquote equal does not mean equality in the sense that all are exactly the same. President J. Reuben Clark Jr. explained, quote, "One of the places in which some of the brethren are going astray is this. There is continuous reference in the revelations to equality among the brethren, but I think you will find only one place where that equality is really described, though it is referred to in other revelations. That revelation, in D&C 51:3, affirms that every man is to be equal according to his family, according to his circumstances, and his wants and needs." Obviously, this is not a case of dead level equality. It is equality that will vary as much as the man's circumstances, his family, his wants, and needs may vary. Now, the beautiful thing about this, to shed a positive light on this in case you've been viewing this negatively, is, right now, one of the big problems in our current system, whether in the West or the rest of the world, whatever economic system you're under, there's usually these limitations on how many children you can have because you have to support them. And there may be something like that in the millennium, but it's probably going to be less restrictive. it's probably not going to be as, what I mean is, it's probably not going to be as expensive to raise a family in the millennium, and therefore you can have many more children, which is something that I think a lot of people want. Especially if you have righteous desires, you realize that children bring happiness. They bring true happiness, and it's a blessing to have children. And why wouldn't you want to have as many as possible? And I wish that I did, but our circumstances don't permit. Because, well, just I don't need to go into the particulars, but just different things. Different things. I wish that we did have more children, and I wonder what my life would have been like if it had been in a millennial setting rather than this world that we have to deal with. So I think that that's a great thing. All right, moving on. The stewardship is private, not communal property. So it's not going to be like a hippie commune. It's not going to be like North Korea. Private property, but like stewardship, really. It's not yours, it's the Lord's, but your steward, like it says here, the stewardship is private, not communal. Okay, the consecrator or steward was to be given a writing, quote unquote, or deed that would secure unto him his portion, stewardship. Although it has been acknowledged that all things belong to the Lord, a stewardship represents a sacred entrustment of a portion from God to that individual. The stewardship is given with a deed of ownership, so that individuals, through their agency, are fully responsible and accountable for that which is entrusted to them. And is that something that you think about, with your house and your property? Do you take care of it? Do you let things kind of just like fall into disrepair? And of course, like if you're disabled or you have limitations, then you have limitations. But are we being lazy and just letting our things fall apart, or um, we're letting things like accumulate in our house? I think the Lord, and again, no one's going to come around with a checklist of telling you the requirements for every thing about your house. But I think that you can feel the Spirit when it comes to your house and the condition that it's in. And I think that it gets really clear when you think about, oh, what if the Savior made an appearance? Would I be embarrassed by my house? Or on another hand, um, are we the type where something breaks down and then we just buy a new one because we have the money instead of trying to fix that old thing? Are we being wasteful? Because that is wasteful. And it's between you and the Lord, and the Spirit. If you know that, what, I should try and fix this. This has many more miles on it, hours, whatever. Instead of being wasteful and just like going and buying a new one, do you try and fix things? So, all right, continuing. For legal purposes, the stewardship was private property, even though the stewards themselves understood that it ultimately belonged to God. President Marion G. Romney explained, this procedure of providing deeds preserved in every man the right of private ownership and management of his property. Indeed, the fundamental principle of the system was the private ownership of property. Each man owned his portion or inheritance or stewardship with an absolute title, which at his option he could alienate or transfer, keep and operate, or otherwise treat as his own. The church did not own all the property, and life under the United Order was not, and never will be, a communal life, as the prophet Joseph himself said. The intent was, however, for him to so operate his property as to produce a living for himself and his dependents. Accountability for stewardships. Okay, quote, it is required of the Lord at the hand of every steward to render an account of his stewardship both in time and in eternity. For he who is faithful and wise in time is accounted worthy to inherit the mansions prepared for him by my Father. So the things that we own right now and how we treat them, that is going to determine, it's going to be one of the things that determines what you're worthy to have in eternity. President Spencer W. Kimball said, quote, "In the church, a stewardship is a sacred spiritual or temporal trust for which there is accountability. Because all things belong to the Lord, we are stewards over our bodies, minds, families, and properties. A faithful steward is one who exercises righteous dominion, cares for his own, and looks to the poor and the needy." Okay, L5, Administration of the Law, the United Order. So before I do that, so you can see how there might be kind of a collision course between the way things are done now and the law of consecration. And again, I don't know if it's going to be fully implemented worldwide at the beginning of the millennium on both members and non-members alike. I feel pretty confident that it is going to be implemented with all members of the church. But one thing that drives companies, obviously, in a free society is the accumulation of wealth and profit. You have a business, it earns revenue, and if the revenue exceeds the expenses, then you have a profit. And you try and make that number go up and up and up and up and up and up and up, right? And this is the way that we treat our properties, our houses and our land. We want the value to go up so that we can do more than just break even, so we can make some income or profit off of our land that we bought because it appreciated in value. And is that going to be the case anymore? Are we still going to have real estate agents? Like, maybe we will, but if it's not driven by profit, then how's it going to work? I don't know. I'm not sure if we will have. And if you're a real estate agent, put it in the comments below. What do you think will happen? Do you think that your job would exist, or what kind of nature do you think it would? Of what kind of nature would it be in the millennium? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure people will still need to find houses. I don't know. These are like big questions. I don't have the answer. But anyway, when it comes to taking out loans, well, you may not have to take out loans anymore because you don't have prices that are being driven up because people are looking for profit so much. I mean, there was even a time in our own history here in the United States where you could buy a home with cash. You would save up and buy a house. I mean, this was a long time ago, obviously, not within my lifetime. But you didn't need financing, get into debt so that you could live somewhere. You just saved up and then you bought it. And it sounds like in the law of consecration, I don't know how it's going to work, like the practicality of it, but I don't think it's going to be like it is now. You're not going to have $500,000 homes like as is the case in Utah right now, where just an ordinary home is $500,000. Administration of the law, the United Order. The Lord commanded that there be an organization of my people in regulating and establishing the affairs of the storehouse, D&C 78:3, and that this organization be accompanied by all who were joined together in this order. The word order is used to describe the covenant organization established to administer the law of consecration and stewardship to the saints. The jurisdictional limits were set up to coincide with those of a stake. Okay, a stake. The phrase united order suggests that those saints, after being organized into a covenant society or a stake, united in the practice of the law of consecration as the temporal and economic system under which they would live. All right. So stakes. Stakes as a society using this type of economic system under the way which they would live. Residues and surplus. So in other words, profit. Profit, well, I mean, if we're talking about earnings, then profit. But other just stuff, I guess, that you would acquire. Residues and surplus. Storehouses and treasuries. President J. Reuben Clark Jr. explained, quote, that man, oh gosh, that part of a man's property which was not turned back to him if he had more than was needed became the common property of the church, and that common property was used for the support of the poor in the church. It is spoken of in the Revelations as the residue of property. All right. I think there's some people that would struggle with that. Whatever a steward realized from the portion allotted to him over and above that which was necessary in order to keep his family under the standard provided, as already stated above, was turned over by the steward to the bishop. And this amount of surplus, plus the residues to which I have already referred, went into a bishop's storehouse. And the materials of the storehouse were to be used in creating portions, as above indicated, for caring for the poor, the widows, and orphans, and for the elders of the church engaged in the ministry who were to pay for what they received if they could, but if not, their faithful labors should answer their debt to the bishop. As the system developed, the Lord created two other institutions besides the storehouse. One was known as the sacred treasury, into which was put the avails of the sacred things in the treasury for sacred and holy purposes. While it is not clear, it would seem that into this treasury were to be put the surpluses which were derived from the publication of the Revelations, the Book of Mormon, the Pearl of Great Price, and other similar things, the stewardship of which had been given to Joseph and others. The Lord also provided for the creation of another treasury, and into that other treasury went the general revenues which came to the church, such as gifts of money, and those revenues derived from the improvement of stewardships, as distinguished from the residues of the original consecrations, and the surpluses which came from the operation of their stewardships. So I think I get this. Like, for example, okay, let's read this carefully. The Lord also provided for the creation of another treasury, and into that other treasury went the general revenues which came to the church, such as gifts of money, and those revenues derived from the improvement of stewardships, as distinguished from the residues of the original consecrations, and the surpluses which came from the operation of their stewardships. So I don't know if that means, like, if you have a farm, like you have property, like you have the original consecration, you give back, if it's too much, you give back whatever's too much. And then as you operate your farm or small business or whatever, then your surpluses, your profit would go into this treasury. I think that's what this is saying. I'm not sure. Okay, they had all things in common. The phrase they had all things in common is used to characterize those who lived the law of consecration in ancient times. Some have speculated that the term common suggests a type of communalism or Christian communism. This interpretation is in error. The prophet Joseph Smith taught the true nature of having all things in common. Quote, I preached on the stand about 1 hour on the second chapter of Acts, designing to show the folly of common stock, holding property in common. In Nauvoo, everyone is steward over his own property. End quote. Each stewardship is considered private property, and the residues and surpluses consecrated for the storehouse became the common property of the whole church. So we're talking about the extra that you turn back to the bishop. So it's not like your property, your house, your bed, your whatever. Oh, just anyone can come. I need a pillow tonight because my neck is hurting. Sorry, brother, I'm gonna have to take this tonight. Um, no, it's whatever excess you have and you return, then it's common property. It can be redistributed. Okay, it is referred to as the common property because the covenant members of the order had access to it according to their just wants and needs, quote unquote, including the need to improve their stewardship. And again, I don't know what that means. The need to improve their stewardship. Are we talking about like in a small business sense, or are we just talking about like in general? You want to upgrade your house and I have no idea. The word equal is frequently used in the Revelations in the Doctrine and Covenants. In temporal things, you shall be equal. For if ye are not equal in earthly things, ye cannot be equal in obtaining heavenly things. D&C 78, verse 6. Appoint unto this people their portions, every man equal according to his family, according to his circumstances, and his wants and needs. D&C 51:3. The Lord gave his definition of the term equal. And you are to be equal, or in other words, you are to have equal claims on the properties for the benefit of managing the concerns of your stewardships, every man according to his wants and his needs, insomuch as his wants are just. D&C 82:17. I think this is maybe a good place to stop, and I would actually like to read the rest of this, but we're coming up on an hour here. So I need your input. Would you like me to do a part 2 of this video? I think that I would like to do it, but only if you guys want to. And of course, it's going to be determined on how this video performs, because ultimately that tells me if this was a good video or not. But either way, I do think I want to add to this spreadsheet, and I would invite you to put in the comments below, what other careers do you think are going to go away? What other careers are going to go away in the second coming? There's going to be a lot. Like, for example, I'm just going to put this here. I put it on my other spreadsheet, but let's do, for example, law enforcement. Now, there may be some form of law enforcement. Again, yes, the wicked are going to perish. The earth is going to be cleansed. But I'm pretty sure that even celestial or terrestrial people occasionally, maybe don't use the best judgment and break the law occasionally. Even if it's not very often. There's people that speed. There's people that, I don't know, maybe commit I don't know. There's any number of things. So I would imagine at the beginning there might still be some kind of law enforcement. I'm not so sure that any of them are going to need pistols anymore. Maybe not even handcuffs. Maybe not even police cars. Maybe it's going to be, much different than it is now, but maybe there's going to be some kind of law enforcement. So when I put law enforcement on here, I just mean law enforcement as we now know it. And then later on in the millennium, once everybody's a member of the church, I'm sure it would be reduced even further, based on the way that the scriptures describe that period of time. So anyway, yeah, law enforcement, another one we have morticians. Is that how it's spelled? Let me double check. It's not something that I typically write. Yeah, mortician. Okay. Morticians, there's not going to be any more dying the way that we know it now. There is going to be death, but it's going to be in a split second. It's going to be in the twinkling of an eye, but there's not going to be any more graves. Let me just do the whole, what would you call, let's see, funeral services? I don't know. That would include everything from cemeteries to morticians to people that manufacture caskets, organize funerals and stuff like that. I'll just do funeral services. That's one that I can say with confidence will not be around anymore. I'm sure there's more. So put in the comments other ones that I should put here, and then I will put it, and I'll do column C. I'll do credit. I pretty much have this column on every spreadsheet. If you submit something to me, I put it on the spreadsheet. I give you credit. But let me know what else you think would be on here. So just as a recap, military. I don't know if I want to do this in like general. Yeah, I'll just do it. For right now, I'll just do kind of like these larger categories. So we'll just say military includes military contractors, DoD, civilian employees, and the intelligence community, and so on and so forth. So military, casinos, possibly real estate professionals, finance. I don't see that really moving on into the millennium, or at least it won't be around for long, I don't think. Law enforcement, at least not as we know it now, and then funeral services for sure. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.